and it's probably going to matter even more in the future. So here we have a three-sided debate, the three candidates. Sorry. One of the striking things that's different from Taiwan, one of the differences between Taiwan and the United States, we're in the midst of this political campaign, but as far as I know, they don't sell Mitt Romney motorcycle helmets, okay? And they're probably not far off, but no Obama iPhone covers, or tissues, or all the kinds of things. You see the water, this sort of thing. So all the candidates have this stuff. And one of the things that I spent a lot of time, my colleagues and I who visited Taiwan during the election, how do you choose who you buy this stuff from? Because one of the issues, for example, with regard to one of the DPP's programs were these little piggy banks. Wouldn't it have been a problem if those came from a factory in China? All right? But no, so you have to find a local supplier for these things. But who do you choose? How much do you pay? What's the profit margin on these items? And here, I took this picture at the Guomindang headquarters. What is this supposed to, first of all, it's water, but what is this supposed to look like? Thumbs up. Thumbs up. The campaign sign. Okay, that sort of thing. But you could do other, a little bit of censorship here. Sorry. You too could take your picture with Ma Ying-jeou. The opportunities abounded. So here you've got the Taiwan Bravo. They also made, they would have pictures that would show the president and the vice presidential candidates for the Guomindang pumping gas. What's that about? Anyone know? Some of the people, Jiao, add gas, right? Add fuel. But also, they would have a sign. They would have a sign. It was 95 octane, a play on Ma Ying-jeou's name, the 9 in his name, and the vice presidential candidate Wu, which is not the character for 5, but they played on that. Here are the rallies. Taiwan's famous for its rallies. These are fascinating. For those of you from the mainland, those of you from the United States, go to Taiwan, sample one of these. Jump in, jump in. They're very different depending on which party you visit. This is a Guomindang rally, very disciplined. Here we're lining up. We have assigned seating. Buses pour in, people pour in, and they're mobilized. Tends to be an older audience too, interestingly enough. At the Guomindang rally, you've got inspirational speakers, you've got people talking about the golden decade that lies ahead, and you have pop stars, dancers. And I've got video. If the still photo doesn't satiate you, we have video of it. But what was interesting to me was this was the immediate lead-in to Ma Ying-jeou himself. So they knew what would get the audience's blood moving. Okay? Very exciting stuff. And then Ma Ying-jeou comes out, his wife off to the side. His wife is the so-called secret weapon. If we have time during the question and answer period, we might talk a little bit more about that. She was by far the most popular semi-political female figure in Taiwan. Now here, I'm a little bit farther out. What do we see? We see, of course, the Guomindang blue signs. We have the message to vote number 2 on the ballot. Vote number 2 for Ma Ying-jeou. But also the flag of Taiwan. The flag of Taiwan. You don't see this at the DPP rallies. And the reason, of course, is simple. The DPP takes offense of the presence of the Guomindang flag within the national flag. So here, Again, a golden decade ahead. Now, the Song rallies were not so well attended, which should have been a very big signal. So I went to the Song rallies, went around and talked with folks, and as it happens, the fellow on the right, he's an electrical engineering student from Berkeley, and he went back to Taiwan specifically to vote in this election. And he went to the rallies, and he, as I said, he wears the Caltrans orange and goes around, and he was so passionate. And here we're talking to some folks. This is a couple hours before the rally begins, and they're talking about the mobilization effort. One of the striking things is these two individuals, the fellow in the center and the fellow on the right. The fellow in the center was a former merchant sailor, and then you know already about the fellow on the right. Both of them loved James Song. They had great respect for him. They both said that they planned to vote for the Kuomintang because they were afraid that if the election was close, that a vote for James Song would bring the DPP to power. That, of course, had happened in the year 2000. And so although they cared very much for James Song, they liked him, they wanted to support him, they went to the rally, they bought the stuff, they weren't going to vote for him. And that was something that some of the pollsters missed, because the expectation was that Song would get more votes than he did. Guess who else we found at the Song rally? He was a little bit surprised when I took a picture of him. He was midway through his box lunch there. I didn't realize that Chiang Kai-shek was still with us. A remarkable thing. But he was there. He was there. And, of course, he's quite conscious. I mean, this is not an accident that he shaves his mustache this way or anything else, or that he chooses to wear these particular clothes. But he was at the Song rally. You'll see him again. This is amazing. This is amazing. Because no one else in Taiwan would run and sort of embrace Chiang Kai-shek, the former dictator, the person who ruled himself and then his son ruled for so many decades. But Song's got him up there. And he's running, remember, against Chiang Kai-shek's party. Very interesting thing. An odd character to the campaign. Everybody has a song, by the way. Maybe one of the things that you could do would be to listen to the various campaign songs and to hear that. Here we've got Tsai's campaign. And so many places, this happens to be a building, on the side of a building in Taipei. The other is at the campaign headquarters in Banqiao. The first female president. Taiwan next, Tsai Ing-wen. Tsai Ing-wen, the first female. There was a lot of emphasis on this. It was seen, in many ways, as a historic candidacy. Who would women vote for? Would women embrace Tsai Ing-wen? Of course, Taiwan is far ahead of the United States. They've had a female vice president. We haven't. One of the interesting things is the colors. Now, traditionally, the DPP color is green, right? The party logo, the island, green, all of that. But here we have a great de-emphasis on the color green, except farther south in the DPP stronghold. Other places you had this kind of pinkish color and yellow. And here on this particular campaign truck, all three. Everything symbolic. Now, the little piggies. Who knows the story about the little piggies? Anyone? This is campaign brilliance. As legend has it, we've got 3 kids show up to support Tsai Ing-wen's campaign. And they bring the money, how? In their piggy banks. And then the government says, no, you can't do that. Not because of the piggy banks, but because of who brought the money. In Taiwan, you can't contribute unless you can vote. And you can't vote if you're not 20. And these kids clearly are not 20. So that money was refused, but it wound up being embraced as this genius opportunity. And so the piggy bank, the xiaoju, the little piggy, became a symbol, a populist symbol. And so ultimately, the DPP collected 143,000 piggy banks. People brought money in these banks to donate. It became a rallying cry. And so in that one commercial where the woman is providing milk, for the dog, and they're talking about little piggies, they know the difference between a dog and a pig. This is instead a reference here to this mass campaign. And so on December 10th, show up with your piggy bank. And it wound up taking over. And so with this campaign truck, the front of it, the piggy face, right? And then the campaign truck, the back of it looks like a bank. This was genius, seized upon by the DPP campaign. And so here we have stacks of little piggies. Some of those 143,000 piggy banks that were collected. And this is outside the DPP headquarters near Taiwan's capital in Taipei. And you see the giant little piggies on the top. And they had songs, and they had dances. They had a lot of stuff on this. And they had... If you're a campaign strategist, you push every button you can. So what could be better than tying the little piggies to an angry bird, right? And so they're reaching out to the young voters who are addicted to Angry Birds on their iPhones and other phones, and turned that into this thing. And this is in the campaign headquarters for the DPP in the city of Taichung. Taichung was a big battleground. Here we have the map of Taiwan created with little piggies. And the slogan here, 公平正义, right? The notion about fairness, equality, fairness. Here's what a campaign headquarters looks like after the rally. What is everybody doing? Eating, of course, right? I'd like you to check out this poster. This was not widespread. This is aimed at a particular audience in Taiwan. So they're going to have, one of these things where they have a parade. And the candidates will drive through and everybody will go and wave and cheer and do those kinds of things. But what time of day is the parade going to be held? 2:28. What's that about? I mean, they got something else going on at 2:30? Why 2:28? A tragedy. What tragedy? Don't be bashful. No. No, it's not a remembrance of the 2008 earthquake in southwestern China. This is looking back to the beginning of Kuomintang rule in Taiwan. After World War II, the Japanese withdraw, the Kuomintang moves in. 1947, you have a dramatic incident. You have unrest, and the suppression of that unrest that goes way, way beyond what was necessary. People were killed. The 228 event. And so this is a signal. This is a signal. They aren't saying the Kuomintang are bad. They're not writing that, but that is what they're saying. They're reminding people they're playing an identity card. Now, this was not widespread. This is the only poster I saw this on. Yeah, so this emphasis on 2:28 in the afternoon. Well, the big news the day before the election was the former president of Taiwan, Lee Teng-hui, who was the president from the 1980s all the way 1992 through to 2000. He was the first president directly elected in 1996. Graduate of Cornell University. Lee Teng-hui was supposedly too sick to make any public appearance. He wrote a letter endorsing Tsai Ing-wen, calling on people to vote for Tsai Ing-wen. But he was too sick. But then he turned up at the final rally. And it was, of course, a big emotional moment for some of their supporters. Now remember, or if not remember, at least understand, Lee Teng-hui was the representative of the Kuomintang, but had broken with the party that had put him in power to support the opposition. Tsai Ing-wen, Lee Teng-hui. And here you have all kinds of ads. This is a Tsai Ing-wen ad. What do you need to do? Get your ticket, get your train ticket, and go and vote. Go and vote. And you had, of course, thousands of people who flew from the United States to Taiwan to cast ballots. And you have to return to the place where you're registered to cast these ballots. It's really a striking thing. A striking thing. Now, we were talking about outside influences. With regard to the mainland is said to have made it simple for Taiwanese business people, of which there are supposedly 1 million living on the mainland, to go back to Taiwan to vote. They made plane flights available, they simplified things. Go back and vote. Hoping, of course, that you would go back and vote for continuity, for keeping Ma Ying-jeou in power. Not everybody did, though. Of course not. Many of the Taiwan business people who returned cast ballots for the opposition, for the Democratic Progressive Party. The outside influences with regard to China also included special procurement trips that the Chinese government organized to send buyers for agricultural products into southern Taiwan to try to, what? Show that working with the mainland paid off economically. But the slide up now refers to the question of whether or not the United States intruded into the election. Now, in the documentary, you saw the supposed leak from not a leak, but a deliberate plant by somebody in the Obama administration to the Financial Times to send a signal that the United States was worried that a Tsai presidency might destabilize the cross-strait relationship, might lead to problems. Well, just before the election, the former chief American representative in Taiwan, a fellow who represented the United States in Taiwan during the Bush administration, Doug Paul, he goes to Taiwan. He's part of a delegation to observe the election, and he gives an interview, a television interview. And he says some things. And one of the things he says is that the United States looks at Tsai's proposal to create a Taiwan consensus, and he says, we don't think it's doable. The message is, we don't endorse Tsai Ing-wen. Now, was Doug Paul speaking for himself? He's a private citizen. He's not a government employee. He works at a think tank. He's entitled to his opinion about anything. Or was he sending a governmental signal? Was the United States meddling in the Taiwan election? Someone who thought his message was inappropriate was the leader of another American delegation. Former Alaska Senator and Governor Frank Murkowski, who condemned the message, saying the United States should have no position and Doug Paul should not say these things because people may misunderstand. We can talk about this in the discussion section, but the key question is, who's responsible for Taiwan? Does the United States want to send a message to Beijing that if it has a problem with Taiwan, it should talk to the United States? Is that the message? It became the subject of considerable discussion. And in fact, the de facto American embassy in Taiwan, the American Institute in Taiwan, canceled a meeting. Doug Paul, who used to be the head of that body, was refused. He was not allowed to come and have this meeting. The United States government formally did this. Now, was this an act? Did we really have a message? Well, we'll quickly wrap up here. But for those of you who haven't seen a Taiwan election, here are some pictures from the actual voting process. It looks like an election in the United States in many respects. Many of the polling places are at churches or at schools. This happens to be a school. People line up, you show your ID, you go in and you cast your ballot. For this election, there were 3 separate ballots. One ballot for the presidential election, one ballot for your local representative, and then one ballot for which party you wanted to support. And you have election monitors. The people who staff this are volunteers. In this case, mostly teachers at that school. But you'll have 2 government officials. Here are the 3 boxes that you drop your different colored ballots in. Oh. Here's instructions on how you should vote. Okay, so this is from the Tsai campaign. We've got Lee Deng-hui, we've got this kind of thing, and then you have your different colored ballots. So you have your pink ballot is for the presidency, the yellow ballot